Hello students. Now today we are going to study about qualitative analysis of organic compounds, mainly a bifunctional organic compound. So our area is to study about practical analysis of qualitative analysis of organic compound, a bifunctional organic compound. We know that organic compound is a compound in which we have carbon and hydrogens, and we are talking about a bifunctional group, means any organic compound which have two functional groups. Such type of organic compound we are going to analyze qualitatively. So let us begin with qualitative analysis of organic compounds, bifunctional organic compounds mainly. Okay. So how are we going to deal with it is, this particular test is divided into different parts. The very first test that we are going to talk about is preliminary test, then it is solubility test, then detection of elements, in which we are going to study whether whether our compound have nitrogen, sulfur or halogens. Then we are going to talk about detection of functional group, detection of physical constant, and finally we are going to do the confirmatory test, which will help us to know what the compound we are dealing with. Okay, so let us begin with first preliminary test. Preliminary test, as name suggests, that it will only give us a preliminary idea what type of compound compound we are dealing with. The very first job is to study its nature, wherein we try to see only the physical state of the compound, whether the compound is solid or liquid. Solid or liquid. Gaseous compounds are not given for analysis for simplicity reasons. So nature, if it is solid, we'll say it is solid, and if it is liquid, we'll say it is liquid. And how we are going to write down in our lab notebook, we are going to write it down as test, observation and inference. So the very first test will be nature of compound. I would say observation is, say the compound is solid, I'll say it is solid, and my inference will be a solid compound is present. A solid compound is present. Okay. Next is our job to see the color of the compound. Our compound can be of variety of color. It can be white. Most of the organic compounds are white in color. It can be yellow, or it can be yellowish orange, and it can have different colors. Whichever color we are dealing with, we'll write down that color and we'll talk about the inference. Herein one clue to you is, if the organic compound is color, generally it possesses nitrogen. Not always, but most of the time, if the compound is colored, especially yellow colored, it must have nitrogen in it. So this will give you a hint that if you are dealing with an intensely colored compound, there might be a nitrogen element present in a compound. Another test that we perform is odor of the compound. Because organic compounds are covalent, these compounds will definitely have some degree of volatility, and so we can detect the odor of these compounds. Odor of the compound can be studied by just taking a pinch of organic compound in a pinch and then rub it and then detect the odor of the compound. Whatever odor we are going to get, we are going to write down that odor in observation, and then we'll talk about inference. For example, if the compound is having a carbolic odor, we'll say the compound is phenolic. If we detect the odor to be somewhat fishy, then we'll say the compound may be amines, and so on. If the compound is sweet smelling, we may say we are dealing with esters. Okay. Another test, the fourth test that we do, is flame test. Flame test is something that is important, which may help us to understand some elements if they are present in our given compound. Okay. In flame test, we have two different ways by which we do flame test. One is on porcelain and another is Beilstein test. In porcelain, we take a compound on a porcelain piece and heat it in a oxidizing flame. So on heating it in an oxidizing flame, if we are getting a sooty flame, if you are getting a sooty flame, your inference would be you are dealing with an aromatic compound. Aromatic compound. Okay, aromatic compound, or the compound, organic compound in which the ratio of hydrogen is lesser than the amount of carbon that it possesses. Okay, so on the other hand, if the compound is non-sooty, you will say you are dealing with a non-aromatic organic compound. In Bilstein test, what we do is we take small amount of compound on a copper foil and heat it on a oxidizing flame. Heat it on a oxidizing flame, and we check if we are getting any greenish blue flame. If we are getting any greenish blue flame, if we are getting greenish blue flame, then our observation, then our inference will be compound contains halogen. Compound contains halogen, and this will give us a hint that we may get test for halogens present when we are dealing with detection of elements. Okay, so either I'll have a halogen compound, or if I am dealing with some compound such as urea or thiourea, though these compounds do not have halogen, despite of that they will also give a greenish blue flame. So what will my inference will be? Compound giving greenish blue flame on a copper foil, inference will be a halogen containing compound or urea or thiourea may be present. Okay. Another test that we do is in preliminary test is test for unsaturation. Test for unsaturation means we are going to talk about this unsaturation deals with unsaturated hydrocarbon. That is whether we are dealing with carbon-carbon double bonds, multiple bonds. So if I am dealing with any carbon-carbon double bond, these two tests will help us to know whether the compound is unsaturated hydrocarbon. Unsaturated hydrocarbon. The first test is test with bromine water. We know that bromine water is bromine dissolved in water and will have reddish brown color. And if we have a carbon-carbon double bond system, that is if we are dealing with unsaturated hydrocarbon, we know bromine reacts with a unsaturated part of a hydrocarbon to add to that molecule. So we'll get an addition product. Wherein bromine molecule will get added up. This is reddish color. This is reddish in color, and this is colorless. So what will be my observation if I am dealing with an unsaturated hydrocarbon, organic compound plus bromine water? It becomes colorless. We say it is decolorizes. It is decolorizing bromine water. We'll say unsaturated hydrocarbon is present. Unsaturated hydrocarbon is present. Similarly, instead of that, if I am using aqueous dilute KMnO4, what do I get is I get an addition product of diol, vicinal diol, which are again colorless. So KMnO4 is pink in color, and so it will make the solution colorless again. So again my reaction with bromine water will be compound plus bromine water decolorizes bromine, unsaturated hydrocarbon present. Compound plus dilute KMnO4 decolorizes KMnO4, again my inference will be unsaturated hydrocarbon present. One point is to be kept in your mind that because KMnO4 is intensely colored, a decrease in intensity of the color may not be seen if you are taking very concentrated KMnO4. So it is important that your KMnO4 is very dilute. You need to take KMnO4 that is highly dilute solution. Okay, so this is the test for unsaturated hydrocarbon. So this is how we are going to do the preliminary test. After doing preliminary test, next test is solubility test. So we talked about preliminary test, and now we are going to talk about solubility test. Pause. So let us begin with the another test, that is solubility test. This test is going to give us more solid information regarding the compound that we are dealing with. The very first test that we do in solubility test is compound plus water. Compound plus water, and then we shake this. So we take a compound in a test tube. We take say 5 ml of water and we shake it vigorously, and we see whether the compound is soluble in water or not. If compound is soluble, it will dissolve. If it is insoluble, it will remain as a solid, and we'll say it is insoluble. And so how we are going to write down here is, our test will be compound plus water shaken well. My observation is, say it is insoluble, so I'll say it is water insoluble compound. Same will be inference. So water insoluble compound is present, like this. Water insoluble compound is present. So now, depending on whether my compound is water soluble or water insoluble, my further tests are decided. My further tests are the test for chemical nature of a compound. Chemical nature of a compound. So now herein we are going to talk about the chemical nature of the compound. We know that organic compounds, as far as their chemical properties are concerned, can either be acid or they can behave as a phenol. That is, either they can be phenolic, they can be acidic, or they can be basic. And obviously there are some organic compounds majorly which are neutral. So now, after knowing that the compound, whether it is soluble in water, or these tests are to be decided, now we have already said that our compound is insoluble. So we'll talk about what chemical tests we are going to perform, so that we get the chemical nature of a compound, to know whether the compound is acidic, phenolic, basic, or neutral. Okay, so let us talk about first acid. What if my compound is acid? What if I am dealing with organic acid? Organic acid means, what functional groups do we have in acidic organic compounds? Usually we have this functional group COH, which we write it as like this. We say this is carboxylic group. Carboxylic group. So we call this group as carboxylic group. So one of the functional group that acts as acid in organic compound is carboxylic group, and another is SO3H, that is sulfonic group. Sulfonic group can be written as like this. So there are two different functional groups which can act as acid as far as organic compounds are present. One is carboxylic group and another is sulfonic group. Okay, so now our job is to know whether our compound is acid or not. In general, if I ask you what are acids, a chemist will say acid is a compound which can neutralize a base. Acid is a compound which can neutralize a base. So if I want to know whether the compound is acid, what will I do is, I will take a suitable base and try to react that acid with a base, and we'll see if it is capable to neutralize that base. If that base is neutralized, I'll say the given compound is acid. So what I want to know is, if I want to know this compound is acid, I must choose a suitable base. Which will obviously react with this compound only and only if that compound happens to be acid, and it will result in the formation of salt, because salts are majorly ionic, and if I am using aqueous solution, and because salts are ionic and solution is aqueous, salt will dissolve in water. Okay, so this reaction we are expecting. So if I want to know whether my compound is acid, what will I do is I'll check it with a suitable base. So how are we going to do is, so the very first test that we do is test for acids. And we'll assume that we are talking about carboxylic acid. Similar type of reaction will be valid even for sulfonic acid. So if I am dealing with this functional group, say R is any alkyl group, and I am adding a suitable base. What suitable base I am choosing? I am choosing saturated sodium bicarbonate. So I have used saturated sodium bicarbonate. We know that sodium bicarbonate on hydrolysis gives OH minus ions in water, and those OH minus ions will act as a base and will react with carboxylic acid. Because now if we are dealing with acid, how carboxylic sodium bicarbonate will react with the carboxylic acid? It would react like this. It will form a sodium salt. A water and carbon dioxide will be released. Gas will be released. This reaction is balanced already, so we need not have to balance the reaction. So what is the observation? Your carboxylic acid, we have already presumed that our organic acid is water insoluble. So because it is water insoluble, this will be a solid compound, and on adding saturated bicarbonate, you are getting a sodium salt of carboxylic acid. We know that oxygen and sodium, because it is a salt, I cannot show it as a dash. It is not a covalent bond. There is an ionic bond between oxygen and sodium, so I will say it is O minus and Na plus. And because it is ionic compound, and our whole solution, this is saturated solution and is in water, because ample amount of water is present, this sodium salt will dissociate into water, into RCOO minus and Na plus, and this compound will dissolve. So you will see that your compound is soluble in saturated sodium bicarbonate solution. Along with what it is doing is, it is also giving out carbon dioxide gas. So because it is giving carbon dioxide gas, it will dissolve as well as it will give effervescence. So if you are carrying out the reaction in a test tube, as soon as you will add your sodium bicarbonate in organic compound which is carboxylic acid, you will find that carbon dioxide bubbles are coming out. We call it as efflorescence. So what you will be observing is, your observation will be compound plus saturated sodium bicarbonate solution. Your observation is compound dissolves with strong effervescence. And your observation, you know that if it is giving effervescence, means if base is reacting with any compound, this compound has to be acid. So now you know that you are dealing with a base and it is reacting with your unknown compound, so this unknown compound has to be acid. Now because it is giving carbon dioxide and also making your compound dissolve in sodium bicarbonate, this is possible only and only when your compound is acid. You will say compound dissolves with strong effervescence, you will say acidic compound is present. acidic compound is present. On the other hand, if your compound is not acid, when you will take a compound in a test tube, add a bicarbonate, you will see no reaction, no effervescence, neither your compound will dissolve in it, you will say that compound plus saturated bicarbonate, compound do not dissolve, no strong effervescence, so acidic compound absent. Acidic compound for acid is your carboxylic acid will react with saturated sodium bicarbonate solution to give sodium carboxylate and will form water and carbon dioxide, which can be seen as effervescence. So this will give us an information that we are dealing with carboxylic acid. How we are going to confirm this? So my test is, in a compound I have taken saturated sodium bicarbonate, NaHCO3, saturated sodium bicarbonate, the compound will dissolve and will give effervescence of carbon dioxide gas. And because this salt is water soluble, it will go into solution. To this solution, if I add, that is, now my solution is a solution of sodium carboxylate. To this solution, if I add 1s1 HCl, this is a weak acid and this is a strong acid. So as soon as a weak sodium will get an opportunity to combine with a strong base, that is to the chloride part, it will leave carboxylate ion and it will result in the formation of a carboxylic acid back again and NaCl as a byproduct. Now because our organic compound is water insoluble, it will form a precipitate and you will say solid will reappear in this reaction. Okay, so this will confirm that because your solution with treating with 1s1 HCl is forming a solid, this confirms that you are dealing with carboxylic acid. So my confirmatory test will be solution plus 1s1 HCl, solid reappears. Acid present and confirmed. So this will be the confirmatory test for acids. And if you are getting acidic test negative, then you will go for another test. What is the another test? Another test is test for phenol. So if we are getting test for acid negative, then we will see whether or not our compound is phenolic. Now what are phenols in general? Phenols are those organic compounds in which the OH group, hydroxyl group, is directly attached to the aromatic part of a given organic compound. So if OH group is directly attached to the aromatic part of an organic compound, we'll say that compound is phenol. We have already studied in our lower classes that phenols are slightly acidic. Slightly acidic means phenols are weakly acidic. And some of the phenols in which there are groups attached which are electron pulling, they may be also fairly good acidic. For example, you would have seen a raw mango. If you pluck a raw mango, the latex that oozes out and rolls on the body, on the skin of the mango, it burns the skin of the mango. It is because of the polyphenols that are present in that latex. So even if that particular latex comes in contact with your lip or in the near zone of your lips, you may get some lesions. I don't know whether you are familiar with, but you may get some legends. This is because of the polyphenols acidity. So because polyphenols are fairly good acids, if they come in contact with your skin, they can cause your skin to burn if the skin is very delicate. Okay, so now having studied that phenols are slightly acidic, that is phenols are weakly acidic. Phenols are weakly acidic. Here in our problem is salt. We know that I can identify an acid by treating it with a suitable base. By treating it with a suitable base. But now question arises, what is my suitable base to study whether or not I am dealing with a phenolic compound, which is a weakly acidic compound. Now, because I am dealing with a phenol which is weakly acidic, if I want this weak acid to react efficiently with base, I know that if one is weak and if I want this weak reagent to react effectively with this reagent, this reagent has to be strong. This base has to be strong. If both are weak, reaction won't be effective and equilibrium will be on more reactant side. So if I want my equilibrium to shift on the right side, that is on the product side, I would choose a base that is a strong base. And the most celebrated strong base in our laboratory is NaOH. NaOH. Again, a point is to be noted that because my phenol is weakly acidic, so I am choosing a strong base so that it ensures that NaOH reacts with this weak base efficiently and shifts the reaction towards the product side. To guarantee that this NaOH efficiently reacts with phenol, I will not use dilute NaOH, but I will use 20% NaOH solution, which is aqueous. So it is necessary that you are using 20% NaOH solution. Why I am using NaOH strong base? Because my phenol is a weak base. So if weak acid. So if I want it to react with a base, my base has to be strong. Why I am using so much concentrated 20% NaOH? Only again this is going to guarantee that no matter how weak this acid is, because of its high strength and high strength as a base and concentrated condition will ensure that phenol reacts anyhow. So again, this reaction between phenol and a base will be acid-base reaction. So I know that what should I expect in acid-base reaction? I should expect a salt. And water. So this is the reaction. Again, I know that oxygen is highly electronegative, sodium is highly electropositive. So a covalent bond is invalid, irrelevant in this case, and I will deal with a ionic compound which is a sodium phenate or sodium phenoxide. And because this is an ionic compound and we are using water in a reaction as a solvent and all sodium salts are water soluble, this compound will dissolve in water. So what will be my observation? We have already concluded that my compound is water insoluble, but now if my compound is dissolving in 20% NaOH, it suggests me that I am dealing with a phenol. So what will be my test? Compound plus 20% aqueous NaOH shaken well. You will say compound dissolves, and then you will say phenolic compound present and confirm. Phenolic compound present. Okay. So now herein I get to know that I am dealing with a phenolic compound. So this is the way by which I will get to know I am dealing with a phenolic compound. How am I going to confirm a presence of phenol? How am I going to confirm a presence of phenol? What I have did is, in a test tube I took a compound, in that I have added, so my compound is in a test tube, to that I am adding 20% NaOH. What I observed is my compound dissolves, so my compound goes into solution. And what is my dissolved form of a compound? It is sodium phenate. Sodium phenate. It is sodium phenate which is in a dissolved form. What will I do is, to this solution, that is to a sodium phenate that I have in a test tube now, or a sodium phenoxide that I have in a test tube now, to that I will add 1:1 HCl. 1:1 HCl. Now I know that phenols are weakly acidic, but HCl is a strong acid. Now because I am adding a strong acid, immediately this sodium will leave phenol and will go to that part of the acid which is a strong acid. So it will result in the formation of phenol again, and we know that this phenol is water insoluble, so it will precipitate and we are going to end up with NaCl as a byproduct, and we will get a solid reappearance. Solid reappear. So this clear solution to this clear solution, if I add HCl, what should this acid be? Strong. And if I get solid reappearance, what it will do is, it will confirm that I am dealing with a phenol. So what will be my confirmatory test? My confirmatory test will be to the resultant solution added 1:1 HCl. You will say solid reappeared, and you will say phenolic compound present and confirmed. Phenolic compound present and confirmed. So herein you will get the confirmation that you are dealing with a phenolic compound. So far we have dealt with test for acids, test for phenols, and now let us begin with the test for base. So test for base. Test for base. Now what are organic bases? Organic bases are amines. So if I am dealing with the organic base, I must deal with amine. And what is the functional group of amine, especially primary amine? It is NH2, and it can be any alkyl group, so it is RNH2. So any organic base will be amine, and because the functional group of amine contains nitrogen, I will definitely get nitrogen present in detection of element if I am dealing with a base. So if your compound is base, if you are getting this test positive, it confirms that you must get nitrogen test positive in detection of elements. So how are we going to deal with? So we are dealing with, say, we'll take an example of a primary amine. So what is this compound? This is a base, and I want to prove that this compound is a base. What will I be doing? How would I know that the given compound is base? I know that what is the property of a base? To react with an acid. So what I have to choose is, I have to choose a suitable acid which will react with your base, that is organic compound, and will result in the formation of a salt. Formation of a salt, which is, being ionic, is expected to be water soluble. You notice that every time we are taking the same help, we are preparing a salt which is water soluble, and we are getting the test observation as compound dissolves. compound dissolve. So a base will be treated with a suitable acid. What is that suitable acid we are going to do? Again, you have studied in your lower class that amines are weak bases. Amines are weak bases. I know that if amine is a base, it has to react with acid, but if I want this reaction to be efficient, that is, if I want this reaction to shift on the product side, if one reagent is a weak, another reagent has to be strong, which will guarantee that the reaction is going towards the product side. So the acid that I am going to choose has to be a strong acid. So what acid we are going to use is, we are going to use 1:1 HCl. We are going to use 1:1 HCl. And what is the product that we are going to get in this? We'll get RNH3, which is ammonium ion and Cl minus. This is ammonium ion and Cl minus. So this is ammonium salt of an organic amine. It is an ammonium salt of an organic compound. Okay. Again, all ammonium compounds are water soluble. And because in this we are going to end up with the ammonium compound, this compound will be water soluble. And so what will be the test? You'll say compound plus 1:1 HCl, and then your observation is compound dissolves, and your inference will be base present, or you can say compound is basic. So a compound is soluble in 1:1 HCl. Get to know that you are dealing with a base, that is amine, obviously. So this is the test for base. Now what will we be doing in confirmatory test? What we have done is, in a test tube we have taken a compound, and to that we are adding 1:1 HCl. Because in 1:1 HCl your compound is soluble, it will go into solution, it will dissolve. And what I have in dissolved state, I have a ammonium salt. And what will I be doing? I was dealing with a base, and now I want that base to come back. If I want a base to come back, I will add a strong base, the way in which we added strong acid to regenerate a weak acid, such as carboxylic acid and a phenol. Okay, so I will use a strong base, NaOH. Again, herein it is to be kept in your mind that you are using 20% NaOH. Again, we want it to be strong base plus concentrated, 20% at least. And what will be the reaction? It will result in the formation of RNH2 plus NaCl plus H2O. So this will be the reaction, and because our organic compound, we have already said in solubility test that it is water insoluble, it will form a precipitate. So our observation will be solid reappears. Okay, so what will be my conclusion? What will be my confirmatory test? To the solution that I am getting over here plus 20% NaOH, solid reappears, and our inference is base present and confirmed. So this is the test for base. Now what if my compound is not giving any positive test for acid, phenol, base? Then what shall be my inference then? Then what I did is, I tried my compound for the test of acid, that is, I tried with saturated sodium bicarbonate, and what is my observation? No reaction. I tried it with for phenol. I tried it with HCl. Sorry, I tried it with NaOH, 20% NaOH. What is my observation? No reaction. Then I tried it with 1:1 HCl so as to test a base, and I found it no reaction. So this test is telling you your compound is not an acid. This test is telling you your compound is not a phenol. This test is telling you your compound is not a base. So your compound is neither acid nor phenol nor base. So definitely your compound has to be neutral. Your compound has to be neutral. So how are you going to conclude? How are you going to write it in your test, observation and inference? You'll say that compound is insoluble in bicarbonate or NaOH or HCl. So inference is neutral compound is present. So this is how we are going to do the solubility test, in which we are going to know the chemical type of organic compound. So now let us begin with the actual experiment. So we are going to take one organic compound. You can see the organic compound is there on camera. It may be bright white, but in real it is slightly off-white. So this is the organic compound, which is bifunctional, and we are going to identify the organic compound by using qualitative analytical technique. Okay. At the outset, one must know that whenever we are working in a chemistry lab, we are wearing the apron. All the buttons of the apron are tucked, and we are also wearing a safety goggles. Okay. So let us begin with, this is the organic compound that we are dealing with, and so we are going to do first a preliminary test of that organic compound. Organic compound, we can see it is off-white. So our test is nature. It is solid white colored compound. I will try to see what is the odor of this compound. Odor of the compound is no particular odor. So how am I going to write down in my lab notebook? Test, observation and inference. So nature is solid. So solid compound present. Solid compound present. Then we are going to write down a color. So it is white colored solid. So we'll say acids or hydrocarbons may be present. Next we are talking about the odor of the compound. There is no particular odor, and so we may be dealing with acid or a hydrocarbon, etc. Okay. So we have already talked about this, and what comes next is flame test. In flame test, the very first flame test is performing on a porcelain piece. Okay. So let us begin with this practical. What is our job is, we'll take a porcelain piece, a clean porcelain piece. So this is a porcelain piece. I am taking a porcelain piece in a pair of tongs. See that whenever you are holding a pair of tongs, this outward part is going in this direction. You should not hold pair of tongs like this. your pair of tongs should be held in your right hand in this manner, and if you are using your left hand, your your pair of tongs should be held in this manner. So in flame test, first of all we'll take some compound on a porcelain, and then on an oxidizing flame we'll heat the compound on a flame. While heating, we'll not directly put that in a flame, we'll put it on a side wall and we'll see how it is. If your compound is burning with a intense yellow flame, you'll say the compound is giving a sooty flame. You can see a soot, a black soot that is coming out. Let me see if I can collect the soot. A soot can be seen on this as well, on the porcelain. So your observation is sooty flame. So in your first flame test, porcelain compound on porcelain heated burns with sooty flame. Our inference is aromatic compound present. Aromatic compound or a compound containing smaller ratio of hydrogens to carbon is present. Okay. Another test that we do is heating on a copper foil. So heating on a copper foil. So again we'll do the same thing. We'll take a copper foil. So a copper foil, and first of all we'll oxidize the copper foil completely. We'll take a clean copper foil and oxidize the copper completely. How are we going to oxidize it from the surface? By heating it in a oxidizing flame like this. So now after heating the copper foil, I'll allow it to cool to some extent, and now I'll take my compound on a copper foil and I'll heat it on a oxidizing flame. Again I will not pull it directly into the flame. I'll put on the edges of the flame and we'll see if I'm getting any bluish green color flame. Now you see that it is only heating. So compound. So after oxidizing the copper foil, we take some compound on a copper foil and then we heat it on the edge like this, and we see if we are getting any green flame. So we see that we are not getting any green flame, only soot is being seen here, indicating that halogens are absent in this compound. So heating on a copper foil, no bluish green flame, no bluish green flame. What it indicates? It indicates halogen absent. Halogen absent. So this is the flame test. This is another flame test. After that we have so another test that we are going to talk about is test for unsaturation. In test for unsaturation, the very first test that we'll do is with bromine water. So let us do this test with bromine water. I'll take a compound in a dry test tube, clean. So I took a compound in a test tube, and in that I'll add so you can see bromine water is yellowish in color. We should always cork the bromine back because bromine is fuming oxidant, and then we'll shake the solution and we'll see if we are getting any color change. We see no decolorization of bromine, indicating that we are dealing with a saturated compound. So our compound is not unsaturated, but it is saturated. So I'll say bromine water plus compound, no decolorization, saturated compound is present. Another test for unsaturation is your compound plus dilute KMnO4. Compound plus dilute KMnO4. So let us begin with that test. So this is KMnO4. So I'll take a compound in a test tube. So on a small amount of compound in a test tube. I'll keep this test tube aside. And then in another test tube, I'll take very small amount of KMnO4. So I'll take very small amount of KMnO4 from the reagent bottle. And then I'll dilute it with distilled water. Still intense, I will add more water so that intensity of color goes down. So we'll take dilute KMnO4 in such a manner that the pink color is so dilute that it becomes transparent. Right? You can see that it is transparent. And then I'll take this KMnO4 in a test tube in which we have already added a compound. And then I'll shake the solution to see if this pink color disappears. We could see that the pink color is not getting disappeared, indicates that no decolorization of KMnO4. Because there is no decolorization of KMnO4, our inference is again a saturated compound present. So we say compound plus KMnO4, no decolorization, and my inference comes saturated compound is present. So these are the preliminary tests. Now let us begin with the solubility test. Okay. So having done with preliminary test, let us start with solubility test. In solubility test, the very first test is compound plus water shake. Well, okay. So we'll take a compound in a test tube. and then we'll add water, distilled water to it. Please note that whenever you are asked to use water in lab, you are using distilled water. And then you will shake the solution. Shake the solution to check if at all it is soluble or insoluble in water. Now you can see that no matter how much I shake the solution, compound is not going into solution. So the compound is insoluble in water. If you have a doubt that whether or not it is really soluble, you can increase the volume of water and see if any appreciable amount is going into solution. Again, you will find that your compound is not ready to dissolve in water. So you say that your compound is water insoluble. So what is my observation is insoluble, and so my inference is water insoluble compound. Water insoluble compound. Okay. So after knowing the solubility of a compound, now we'll test its chemical types. So let us begin for the chemical type. Chemical type, and we already know that in a chemical type the very first test we do is a test for acid, and in organic chemistry an acid can be a carboxylic acid or it can be a sulfonic acid, So what is the test? Again, we'll take a compound in a test tube. Take a compound in a test tube. Put amount of compound. And then you'll add saturated sodium bicarbonate solution. I have already brought saturated bicarbonate solution on table. Okay, so this is saturated sodium bicarbonate solution. And what are we looking for now? If at all this compound is acid, it will dissolve in saturated bicarbonate solution, plus it will evolve carbon dioxide gas, and which can be seen as an efflorescence. We'll see if it gives any efflorescence. So we are here to check the solubility and if it is giving efflorescence. You can see the efflorescence are given out by this reaction, and even compound is now going into solution. So compound is getting dissolved in saturated sodium bicarbonate solution, and hopefully on camera screen also you can see small gas bubbles are oozing out. And when I will release this, so compound has gone into solution and it has also given a efflorescence, indicates that the compound is acid. So I'll say compound plus saturated sodium bicarbonate, compound dissolves with effervescence. I'll say acid present. Now what I will do is I will see whether it is acid. Confirm. My job is to confirm the acid. Okay. So what I will do is, my job is to add 1:1 HCl. So this is 1:1 HCl already prepared. I'll reduce the volume and see if I am getting any solid reappearance on adding 1:1 HCl. See the vigorosity of the reaction. Reaction is vigorous, and you can see even forming a solid reappearance. I'll add water to know whether the compound has been generated as a solid. So you see, solid has reappeared. Solid has reappeared. There is a solid in this compound. You can see it on camera. If I add water, you will get to know that there is solid. There are solid particles. So now, hopefully, it is possible to see the solid reappearance. So it confirms that the given organic compound is a water insoluble acid. A water insoluble acid. So what is my confirmatory test? Solution to that I have added 1:1 HCl, and what I have seen is solid reappears. Solid reappears, and so my inference is acid present and confirmed. Acid present and confirmed. So here I complete my solubility test. I got to know that the organic compound that I am doing is a acid. It may be carboxylic acid or it may be sulfuric acid. See, that we'll get to know when we are going ahead. Now another test that we perform after solubility test is detection of elements. Detection of elements. So in detection of element, the very first part that we do is preparation of sodium fusion extract. Preparation of sodium fusion extract. Preparation of sodium fusion extract is an important part of detection of element. What we do is we take one test tube of distilled water, in an evaporating dish, and then we take a fusion tube. This is called as fusion tube. Fusion means melting. Fusion tube in which we have already took a sodium metal piece. Sodium metal piece. Sodium metal is an alkali metal. So it is on the extreme left side of the periodic table below lithium. So hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium and cesium. And we know all these alkali metals are highly electropositive. So this metal is also highly electropositive, and so it is highly reactive. So care is to be taken while handling sodium metal. Sodium metal, when exposed to air, reacts with atmospheric oxygen to form a respective oxides of sodium. Also it reacts with the atmospheric moisture to liberate hydrogen gas. And this metal is so much reactive that at room temperature, if you drop this sodium metal in water, the hydrogen gas that is liberated during the reaction may catch fire and may even lead to an explosion and may result in an accident. So it is advisable that whenever you are using sodium metal, you are taking care, you are using safety goggles, and you are taking all the precautionary measures. So sodium metal is already been taken in a fusion tube. So then I'll hold it in a porcelain, hold it with a pair of tongs like this, and then I'll heat it. How am I going to heat is, again I'm not going to put it directly completely in the flame. I'm going to heat it in an oxidizing flame, that is blue flame, and I'm going to start heating like this. Melting point of sodium is about 90 degrees Celsius. So even if I'm giving heat in this manner, a metal will melt. I don't know if you can see on camera that metal is melting. You can see when I'm taking fusion tube in a flame, the fusion tube is heating. The side flames of the fusion tube that are emanating out is a yellow colored flame, intense yellow colored flame. This yellow color is because of the soda glass. Fusion tube is made up of a soda glass. Soda glass means it contains sodium, and sodium gives yellow flame, and so this flame is telling you that the glass that you are using is a soda glass. So again it is giving you the information. While heating a sodium metal, if you are directly heating it strongly, sometime it may happen that sodium because of heat may be thrown out. So if you are holding it like this, and if some partner is working on the other side, if it is thrown out, it may simply spit it on some other person who is working nearby you. So whenever you are heating sodium metal in a fusion tube, see to it that you are holding it in this manner and you are putting a asbestos sheet over here, which ensures that if at all sodium is thrown out, it will be stopped by the asbestos sheet. So this is the one of the precautionary measure that you are going to do. Now once it is heated fairly, now I will take this out. You can see it is red hot. I'll allow this to attain some low temperature, and then I'll add small amount of compound. So now it is very much necessary that the compound that is added is in contact with the sodium metal. If it is not in the contact with the sodium metal, many times when we add a compound, because inside of tube is too hot, when it tries to goes inside, it converts into gas and goes away, or it may stuck to the inner walls of the glass and no compound may come in contact with the sodium metal. We don't want that to happen. We want that our compound to be in contact with sodium metal. Again, we'll heat it very carefully in this manner and keeping my asbestos sheet like this. You can see that it has oozed out, so nothing to worry, we have already taken a precaution. Now I am heating it. Slowly and gradually, and my job is to heat it to red hot. So you are going to fuse it very nicely, because if fusion is not proper, then you may not end up with the test that you are desiring for. Your expected outcomes would not correlate. So once it is fused completely, it has turned into red hot, you will plunge the test tube plunge the fusion tube like this in a distilled water that we have taken. You will take at least 2 or 3 fusion tubes, which ensures that your compound comes in contact with the sodium and reacts effectively with the metal. So my job is only to melt the sodium metal now. So sodium metal has molten, and to this molten sodium metal again I'll add some compound and will ensure that it is in contact with it. Okay, again I'll heat it slowly and gradually. Again it is to be heated to red hot. When you are heating the fusion tube and you want it to be red hot, you will heat in the zone wherein the blue flame is tapering, because it is the zone wherein there is the highest temperature. If you are putting it down, you will never see that your fusion tube is turning red hot. You will not see much red hot even in this zone. Best red hot condition is achievable only in this zone, because only in this zone the temperature of the flame is highest. So once I fuse it completely, I'll plunge it and I'll take another fusion tube. This will only guarantee my reaction with sodium. So let the metal melt first. Molten, yes. And now I'll take a compound with the care that it comes in contact with the metal. And now again I'll heat it back. So now again same thing, heating it to a red hot. And this red hot tube will again be plunged in a distilled water. After this, our job is to boil this solution for 5 minutes. Boil this solution for 5 minutes. So we have kept this for the solution to be boiled for 5 minutes. So let the solution boil. So what we did in sodium fusion extract, we have taken a sodium metal, melted it by heating. Instead of melted, we say fused by heating, and then we have added a compound. Then we again fused it to red hot and plunged in distilled water. Plunged in distilled water. And what we are doing with this distilled water now? Now distilled water is to be boiled for 5 minutes. And what after 5 minutes we are going to get? We are going to filter this, and the filter rate that we are going to get, we are going to call it as sodium fusion extract. We are going to call it as sodium fusion extract, which we are going to use for the test for detection of elements. Okay. So in detection of elements, I have already told you that we are going to study detection of elements. We are going to study the test for nitrogen, test for sulfur, and test for halogen. So let us talk about first test for nitrogen. Test for nitrogen. What we are going to do is, I have already told you, we are going to take the sodium fusion extract, that extract that we are going to get after boiling this solution 5 minutes and then filtering. The filter rate will be called as sodium fusion extract. So what we are going to do is, we are going to take sodium fusion extract, and to that we are going to add freshly prepared ferrous sulfate solution. It is very much essential that the ferrous sulfate used is freshly prepared. So to that we are going to add freshly prepared ferrous sulfate solution. Once we do this, then we are going to boil the solution. Boil for 3 to 4 minutes, and we are going to get the solution, that is extract plus ferrous sulfate solution. Okay, this solution that we are getting, we are going to cool it to room temperature. Cool it to room temperature. So now we are going to get a solution at room temperature. To that we are going to add dilute H2SO4. To that we are going to add dilute H2SO4. If there is nitrogen present in a given compound, we will get blue or green color precipitate or solution. Blue or green color precipitate. So now let us see some chemistry behind these reactions. Your sodium metal, what we did is we turned your sodium metal into liquid by heating, and then we have combined it with our organic compound in which there is carbon, hydrogen, and say if there is nitrogen in your compound, when you heat it to red hot, your carbon and nitrogen combines to form cyanide. And it results in the formation of Na plus and Cn minus resultantly. So what we end up with, if there is nitrogen, the extract will have sodium cyanide in it. Okay, and to that when we add ferrous sulfate, boil it, cool it, and again we add H2SO4, what we end up with is this complex. This complex is known from ancient time and is named as Prussian blue. And this complex is, if it is in a concentrated form, precipitates, so it may give us a blue precipitate, and if it is not concentrated, it may give a solution that is blue color. Sometimes we may also get a green color. That green color is because if we are dealing with an organic compound, now we are dealing with an organic compound that is white colored, so definitely our extract will also be colorless. But sometimes if we are dealing with an organic compound that are yellow colored, then our sodium fusion extract won't be colorless but will have a yellow color. So your extract will be yellow color, your Prussian blue is blue color, and we know that when blue and yellow mixes, it gives green. So if you are getting a blue color, you will say nitrogen is present. If you are getting green color, you will say nitrogen is present. But Prussian blue will always be blue. It will appear green only because of the yellow tinge that will be there because of your yellow compound. So this is how the chemistry is. This is Prussian blue, and try to find out the oxidation state of this Fe which is outside and this Fe which is the part of the coordination sphere. See if both the Fe are in the same oxidation state. Okay, so our extract is ready. So now what we are going to do is we are going to filter the extract. So now let us collect the extract, sodium fusion extract. We'll filter it through a funnel and by using ordinary filter paper. Whenever you are going to filter anything through ordinary filter paper, see that your paper is already wet by the water, distilled water. Okay, so we have filtered the extract, sodium fusion extract, and what we ended up with is a sodium fusion extract. So this is our sodium fusion extract. Now let us begin with the test for nitrogen. We'll first prepare freshly prepared ferrous sulfate solution. I told you that it is essential that your FeSO4 should be freshly prepared. Why it should be freshly prepared? Because ferrous is Fe2 plus. Ferrous is Fe2 plus, and it is having 6 electrons in its d orbital. If it loses one more electron, it will be d5. That is, all the d orbitals will be exactly half filled, and according to Hund's rule, exactly half filled orbitals are more stable over any other arrangements. So Fe2 plus in presence of atmospheric oxygen gets oxidized to ferric, and your ferrous sulfate solution after some days will convert into ferric sulfate. So we don't want ferric, we want ferrous. So we'll take ferrous sulfate salt. Ferrous is green in color, so we'll take a ferrous sulfate salt in a test tube and then dissolve that in water. So you will take a sodium fusion extract and to that you will add ferrous sulfate solution. So I have added a ferrous sulfate solution. I can see that there is dirty green color precipitate that has formed. This dirty green color precipitate is because of the formation of ferrous hydroxide. It is because of the formation of ferrous hydroxide. Now my next job is to boil this solution for a few minutes and then cool it and then add dilute H2SO4 to that. So now I will boil this solution for a few minutes. You put everything aside. So, and while boiling, see that you are not directly putting it inside. Your glassware should be dry from outside, because if it is not dry from outside, your glassware may crack when kept in flame. And you are heating it like this, you are heating it from the edges and you are shaking the solution continuously, because if you are not shaking, the solution may bump out, and if it is again bumping and that bumping goes on someone else, then that fellow may suffer a burning injury. So we are going to do it like this, and this shaking is going to avoid bumping of the solution. So you can see solution is boiling. Solution is boiling. You will take care that if solution is boiling and it is trying to bump out, it is trying to ooze out, you will keep it aside from the flame so that it normalizes back. It normalizes back. You are going to take care of yourself as well. So we are boiling this solution. So the solution is boiled. You will keep this aside for a while so that it attains the room temperature. So once your solution is cooled at room temperature, you can cool it down at running tap water as well. Then you will add dilute sulfuric acid to this solution. After adding dilute solution of H2SO4, you can see you are getting a green color solution, indicating that there is nitrogen present in a compound. So test for nitrogen is positive. Test for nitrogen is positive. So nitrogen is present. Not nitrogen present. Now test for sulfur. What is the chemistry behind is we are fusing a sodium metal with our organic compound. If at all it is having sulfur with a compound, it forms on fusion sodium sulfide, which dissociates into in water. We are going to plunge this in water, so it dissociates into Na plus and sulfide ion. These sulfide ions may be then treated with lead acetate to give a black PPT of lead sulfide. So this is the test that we are expecting if we have sulfur in a compound. We have already prepared an extract. If there is sulfur, there will be sulfide ions in the solution, and which can be detected by adding lead acetate. We are going to carry out this reaction in presence of acetic acid for common ion effect. So why are we adding acetic acid? For common ion effect. Okay, so let us begin. Let us see if there is sulfur in our compound. I'll again take the extract, and if there is sulfur in a compound, I will be having sulfide ion in this. So I will take the extract, small amount. So extract, and to that I will add acetic acid for common ion effect. So this is acetic acid. And after adding acetic acid, we will add lead acetate. And if there is sulfide in a solution, we would get a black PPT. So on adding lead acetate, no black precipitate means sulfur is absent. So there is no sulfur in this compound element present there. Now the nitrogen. Now we see test for halogens. What is the chemistry behind test for halogens? So test for halogens are generally written as X. So if my sodium metal in a liquid form fuses with the organic compound in which there is halogen, it results in the formation of sodium halide, which in water dissociates into Na plus and X minus. And this halide can be tested by treating it with AgNO3 solution, because if at all I am dealing with any halide, silver will form a precipitate of a respective halide. So if it is a chloride, I will get white PBT. If it is bromide, I will get white PBT, and if it is iodide, I will get a yellow PPT. So a precipitate with AgNO3 will confirm the presence of halide as an element. Again, we are going to carry out this reaction in presence of HNO3 for common ion effect. So let us begin with this. An extract will be taken in a test tube. And to that we are going to add a dilute nitric acid. So this is nitric acid for common ion effect. So we have added nitric acid for common ion effect, and to that if we are going to add silver nitrate, and if there are halides, this silver nitrate will form a curdy white PPT. So I am adding silver nitrate, AgNO3. So no curdy white PPT, halides absent, halogen absent. So we conclude that the elements present in the given organic compounds are C, H, O and N. Now question arises, why I am writing oxygen when I haven't performed any test for nitrogen. I have detected only test for nitrogen, sulfur and halogen. Test for oxygen is not performed, then too I am writing oxygen, but I am putting that in a bracket. One of the reason we are putting the oxygen in a bracket, because we are not performing the test of oxygen. So we do not know if it is present or not. Furthermore, the question arises, why are we not detecting whether or not the oxygen is present? This is because we don't have any specific test available to us which can be performed in a lab to detect oxygen. So because oxygen is something that is not being detected chemically, we will write in a bracket suggesting that it may or may not be present because it is not detected. But everything that is been, because it is organic compound, carbon and hydrogen has to be there. So carbon and hydrogen is there, and nitrogen is something that we have detected. So we can write carbon, hydrogen and nitrogen is present, but oxygen is something that may or may not be present. So these are the elements that are present. So what will be our conclusion? We can say that my organic compound is a water insoluble acid and have C, H, O and N as elements. So this is our conclusion so far. So now we know that our compound is water insoluble acid, have CHO and N as elements. Okay. Now our job is to detect the functional group of the compound. Okay. So let us begin with that. So detection of elements is done, and now we are going to talk about detection of functional group. We already know that our compound is acid, and we have already performed the test. Compound plus saturated bicarbonate is giving us strong effervescence and compound dissolves. So we know that our compound is acid, and your acid can either be carboxylic acid or it can be sulfonic acid. It can be sulfonic acid. Now I know that my compound don't have any sulfur. So it can't be sulfonic acid. So I can say that the functional group of organic compound is carboxylic acid. Furthermore, what I did is in flame test on a porcelain dish, what I got is sooty flame. What it suggested that? It suggested that my organic compound is aromatic. Aromatic means it is having a benzene type aromatic system. If I try to patch up these two, what I may think that my compound may be this, a benzoic acid. I may think that my compound is benzoic acid, but I already know in elemental test what are the elements that I got? CHO and N. So herein you can find carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 carbon. Hydrogens are also present, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hydrogens. Oxygen is also present. But what about nitrogen? So there has to be some more functional group in this particular compound. So tentatively, from the data that is available from now, we may think that it is benzoic acid, but it can't be benzoic acid because our elemental test is telling that there is nitrogen in a compound. So now question arises whether this nitrogen is present as NH2 group or it is present as NO2 group. So we'll try to see, are we getting a test for nitro group. NO2 means nitro group. So we'll try to see what nitrogen is in which form in this particular compound. So let us carry out the test for nitrogen. Test for nitro group. What we are going to do is we'll take a compound in a test tube. And then we are going to add ammonium chloride in this, a solid ammonium chloride. A zinc dust. Herein we are going to carry out a redox reaction wherein zinc is going to act as a reducing agent. Zinc dust and an alcohol. Whenever we say alcohol without a mention of which alcohol we are talking about, it is ethyl alcohol. So it is customary to use ethyl alcohol whenever we don't mention which alcohol we are dealing with. So we'll take alcohol. We'll heat this solution. Now care is to be taken that because alcohols are highly flammable, when we are heating it, also they are low boiling liquids, so these solutions may bump and may catch fire. So care is to be taken while doing the filtration, while heating it on a flame. So what we have did is, we took a compound, ammonium chloride, zinc dust and alcohol, and we are going to boil this solution. Solution is boiling smoothly only because I am shaking the test tube rigorously. Care is to be taken that alcohol do not bumps out. If it bumps out, it will catch fire and may cause severe injury to you. And the mouth of test tube will be held in this manner that if at all alcohol bumps out, it should not cause injury to some other person, whosoever be there. This reaction is bit kinetically slow, so we are supplying heat energy so that it becomes a bit faster. So you have to be careful that when alcohol will start boiling continuously, it may try to ooze out or bump out, and you will always take care that before it comes out you are keeping it away from the flame so that it goes back to normal. So after heating you will keep the flame aside and then you will filter. If the flame is very much close while you are filtering, if the vapors of alcohol comes in contact with flame, the whole system may again catch fire. So we are filtering it through the ordinary filter paper. So let it filter slowly and gradually. So this is the filter rate of our test for nitro, and this is the Tollens reagent. We'll add Tollens reagent. If there is nitro group, we'll get a grey or a black PPT. We are getting a black precipitate, indicate that nitro group is present. We are getting a black PPT, it indicates that nitro group is present. So far where we have reached in qualitative analysis, the point that we have reached is, we know that we are dealing with carboxylic acid, we know it is water insoluble, we know it is aromatic, and now we know that the elements present in the compounds are CHO and N, and just now we got to know that there is a nitro group in a compound. So if I want to club everything, I may suggest, I am not confirmed yet, that the compound is an aromatic ring, acidic functional group, CHO and N, CHO and N is in the form of nitro group. Now my job is only to see the attachment of nitro group. If it is attached at this, I will say it is orthonitrobenzoic acid. If it is here, I will say metanitrobenzoic acid. If it is here, it will be paranitrobenzoic acid. How would I know this nitro group position is attached? This nitro group is attached to which position of this benzene ring, whether on ortho, para or ortho, meta or para? We can confirm that by studying the melting point of that compound. Melting point of the compound is observed to be 237 degrees Celsius,
and searching in the literature, it suggests that the compound is para-nitrobenzoic acid.